Disgraced socialite Ghislaine Maxwell has given her first televised interview from federal prison in Florida. Speaking to the British outlet Talk TV, Maxwell stopped short of an apology when asked if she had anything to say to her victims.
What do you say to the many women who feel betrayed by you and want you to stay in jail?
I say that Epstein died and they should take their disappointment and upset out on the authorities that allowed that to happen.
Then later, when asked about her relationship with Bill Clinton, she bizarrely lavished praise on the former U.S. president.
Well, he's one of the most interesting people I've ever met. He was extremely sharp and interesting, and has a broad range of
However, the interview's biggest bombshell came when Maxwell was asked whether she believes her former associate, Jeffrey Epstein, really committed suicide.
I believe that he was murdered. Well, I was shocked. And I wondered how it had happened. Because as far as I was concerned, he was going to... I was sure he was going to appeal. And I was sure that he was covered under the non-prosecution agreement. But I wasn't in the indictment.
She thought he was going to appeal. It seems like she, on some level, thought that he could still avoid jail time or get out of jail.
Well, he did the first time. That's not a crazy belief to have at all.
That is certainly true, and one might even connect the weirdly laudatory description of Bill Clinton to, you know, if she seems like a kind of person who has this weird respect for authority or power or kind of investment in power, and maybe she just genuinely believe that, you know, bad things happen to other people, jail time happens to other people, that for folks like them, they're kind of above it all. And it has been, to your point, the case certainly in the past. I mean, look, this is in the context, we reported on this, of her doing this kind of having taken this feminism turn where she was teaching women's classes in jail, yoga.
Well, I mean, she's got to find a way to pass the time. I mean,
yes, well, teaching a yoga class is, I think, a little bit different from teaching, you know, modeling behavior in an etiquette class. I think the irony of someone who is in jail for her role in sex trafficking of young girls probably shouldn't be teaching other people how to behave in social situations or how to be polite, upstanding young women in society. I mean, I think the hypocrisy of that would probably preclude me from attending her class, if not my disgust with what she has been accused and convicted of.
This is like a mob enforcer teaching accouning or something?
Exactly. Oh, well, they might know.
They might have some. They might have some good tips for you.
They might have a few good tips. I don't know. What do you make of it? Are you especially surprised by her saying she thinks that Epstein did kill himself?
It doesn't really matter. She doesn't have more information about the circumstances of his demise than anyone else. I thought. And actually, Ryan and I would argue about this because he was more in the vein of thinking that he might have actually been killed. I tend to think that, you know, people kill themselves in prison all the time. It's a neglectful environment. It's not actually surprising to me that the cameras weren't working or that the security guards weren't really paying attention, because it's a depressing, horrible environment. There's not a lot of care in the system toward incarcerated people staying alive, frankly. So it is not. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't.
It could happen.
It does happen. It happens all the time.
Right.
So that was kind of my standpoint.
Most of the time, the people who are committing suicide in jail are not as high priority prisoners who have as many eyes on them, about whom there's all of this fear that they're going to do it, and, you know, anticipated danger and risk assessment, right? Like, there were people who immediately started anticipating that because of all that Epstein knew and all of the powerful people that he could potentially bring down, that he was a target. And that's partly why there was supposed to be heightened scrutiny of him and more protections on him. So that happening in that context did seem to be more anomalous to some folks at least.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true, and I understand why people think that. I don't think it's crazy to think maybe it was something like that at all. But she doesn't really know either. It's interesting to hear, her perspective, I guess.
She knows something about, let's say,
I guess she knows about his
mental state,
mindset, maybe.
and whether he's ever maybe had suicidal ideation before. And look, again, that doesn't mean everything.
But somebody
in a new situation
could be very unlikely or very not inclined towards suicide, be in the circumstance he was in, and see that as the most rational way out.
Look, the other aspect of this that's kind of interesting is, she, like I said, she has in the course of her trial made certain appeals to sexism and femininity to insulate herself against, of course, the charges, and then also to kind of gain some public sympathy. She made this argument in the course of her trial that it was unfair that she was being targeted with this stuff. As the woman in the situation, Epstein was already dead. It was this odd take. And I recently heard someone interviewing her in a documentary about the case, saying that there was this gap between how she talked about people in her kind of class milieu and the girls that were trafficked and set up and exploited, and how she referred to them as kind of like nothing, like, oh, they don't really matter, they're just. And so again, I think that's part of what is sitting uneasy with me, the idea that she's doing this like wellness guru turn and kind of leaning into this yes queen version of a sex trafficker, when it seems like in her real life, obviously given the nature of the crime, she behaved with such indifference to the lives and suffering of the girls that were exploited. And I don't know, I find it to be very off-putting. The public has an understandable interest in her. We don't often see women prisoners of this high profile who used to have a glamorous life that were this close to famous people who attended, the former president's wedding. There's obviously a reason.
I guess I don't really care how she spends her time. If she's in prison, she deserves to be there. She's going to be there for a long time. Beyond that, I think maybe I'm the softie. I get to be the criminal justice softie for once.
Robby,
I don't. Prisoners
it's not
can.
about how she spends her time.
I don't
it's
care.
whether or not she's trying to curry favor with the public or the criminal justice system by painting herself as a victim. This is the thing that we talk about with weaponized identity politics all the time. That while marginalized identities certainly have grievances and have been historically persecuted and disadvantaged legally by our justice system. Women not being able to take out credit cards on their own until the late 70s, early 80s, and on down the line. People who use a kind of girl boss feminism to avoid the consequences of their actual legitimately terrible behaviors poisons the concept of what it means to advocate on the basis of your marginalized group in the first instance. I'm someone who's been very critical of weaponized identity politics, but the identity isn't the problem. It's people like her who cynically use it to get off on things that she 100% is culpable for.
Well, she's not getting off. She's in prison.
Right, but she's tried. She's tried, but she seems to be continuing to try to curry that kind of favor. We all understand this idea of like, oh, bombs, they're dropping bombs on countries that, America shouldn't be bombing, but the plane is painted pink and has like a breast cancer flag on the back, so we're supposed to think it's good. We have what was it, the woke FBI, the diversity commercial for the deep state that had like, I have ADHD and I have anxiety and I work for the FBI too, or I work for the CIA too, whatever it was. That we see that kind of thing all over the place, and I can't help but see it happening here and point it out as pernicious.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. It is funny. It's something we mock, I think, for good reason all the time. The whole yay, progressive, yay. Yeah. Stick a rainbow flag on that bomb we're about to drop in.
And there's nothing wrong with the rainbow flag. It's Raytheon's use of the rainbow flag. That's
the bomb we don't like.
It's the bomb we don't like. Yeah.
All right, we'll have more Rising right after this. Stay with us.